Consider the contrast between the abysmal implementation of Section 404 of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act and the clearly beneficial contribution of revenue assurance. Both were aimed at financial processes, but while one generated millions of hours of audit work, the other focused on value, then achieved it by improving controls and by using effective tools, including computers and statistics. Risk control can provide major measurable value. It's much more than a comfort blanket if we make the effort to pursue that value and use the right techniques and tools.
I'm talking to Matthew Leach, who's the author of Intelligent Internal Control and Risk Management, and we're discussing the issue of value from risk control. Matthew, before we go any further, what's the difference between risk management and internal control?
None, really. It's quite an interesting story, but both of those concepts, risk management and internal control, are quite vague, and over the last 2 decades or so, they both expanded in their scope, so that now logically there really isn't a distinction. You can see that even in the merging of the language. But it has taken a while for people to start to catch on to that, so we still have quite a lot of regulation and guidance that talks as if the two things are quite separate and distinct. But they're really not, and it's a waste of time trying to maintain the fiction that they're separate things. So what I do is just talk about it as one thing, which it is, and use the term risk control to refer to the whole thing.
Okay, fair enough. So if we talk about risk control, does it contribute as much as it should? Is it as effective as it could be?
With a typical program,
yeah.
Say, no, I don't think it does. I don't think it does. I think if there are programs that are focused very much on extreme things that may happen, but are very, very unlikely. A program like that can be improved by adding in things that happen much more often and not so severe, but collectively they're still very important. And if you do that, then you start to be able to bring about improvements to your organisation within literally a few days or weeks. If we're talking about something like disgruntled customers or small medical mistakes or incorrect billing, then that sort of thing's happening all the time. So if you can reduce the extent and the severity of those things, then almost straight away you get benefit from it.
Okay, so what you're saying is that risk is pervasive. It goes across all aspects of the business, customers, every aspect of business process.
Yes, but it's not so much that the risk is out there in all of our business processes. Risk is a function of our limited knowledge. If you were, for example, facing certain death, then although that's a terrible thing to be facing, it's not a risk because it's certain. And so risk is a product of our knowledge. It differs for different people in different situations, but it does mean that risk is not out there. There are things that may harm us or cause us to lose money or give us a benefit. They're out there, but the riskiness of it is to do with our limited knowledge. And limited knowledge is something that we all suffer from all the time. I've yet to meet somebody who is genuinely all-knowing.
Okay, so you talk about all of us, so are you saying that really this is a management skill, this is an issue for management rather than for some risk team or internal audit team?
I think it's a topic for everyone, because everyone can benefit from getting better at dealing with the limitations of their knowledge. It's definitely one for managers, but it's one for everybody. The idea that it would be for a separate team, perhaps with a separate process to deal with risk control, really doesn't work at all, and almost nobody likes that idea, which is good to know.
Okay, so if I'm a manager, how do I go about improving my skill at handling uncertainty? It sounds a bit vague and arcane to me. How can I do that?
Probably the simplest, the easiest and most natural way to do that is just to learn more about techniques you could use.
Okay. Do you want to give me some examples?
Yes, I can give you an example. I quite like to watch The Apprentice on TV.
Okay.
It is stressful because although it's artificial reality TV, some aspects of it are so close to organisational life as I remember it that it's quite uncomfortable viewing. But the thing about The Apprentice which is really interesting to me now is that the contestants are constantly guessing, that they're always, as they put it, out of their comfort zone, which is a code for saying they don't really know what they're doing, because they're given tasks that are outside their area of expertise, so they're guessing even more than usual. Okay. In that situation, they often have to guess a number. How much steel is there in this pile of junk? So, how much should we ask as a price for this piece for this service? Those are the sort of guesses they're often making. And they, time and again, they do what we nearly all do, which is to throw in a number and see what the others in the group think of it. How about 1500? Straight away, everybody anchors to 1500, and we fail to make use of the collective wisdom of the team. Okay. It's always better to ask people to secretly write down their personal view and then share. Very simple idea for dealing with an uncertainty that we face a lot.
So you could do that in terms of what do you think is the biggest uncertainty, or what do you think is the risk associated with X, Y, or Z? You could actually get people to write that down or record that and then share that.
Something like that. If you're asking people to analyse out for you their uncertainties about something, it's usually going to be better to ask them each to do that individually, because, as I said before, risk is a product of our knowledge or limitations of it, and each person's perspective on a situation is different, so naturally the way they carve up their uncertainty will be different. If you put people in a room and say, right folks, tell us some risk, what risks do you see? What you're really getting is little fragments of each person's mental model, and it's not going to be coherent or meaningful.
Yes, yes. So some people might say, for me risk is blue, somebody else says risk is red, or somebody else says risk is yellow. You're just getting a set of different perspectives.
Yes, and then you're putting them together on a flip chart. It's just mixed and mangled into useless oblivion. It's not going to help at all. If we want something that's structured, you can go for the coherent mental model of an individual, and then perhaps you can try and develop something more scientific, if you like.
Okay.
Something more like a scientific model. Obviously we are able to make coherent models as a group, but you have to manage it. You can't just ask people to think of risks and then just put them on a list and think that that gets you something useful.
Yes, yes, and I can understand the need for a model rather than just some statements on a flip chart.
Yeah.
Okay.